Welcome to this week's episode of 0 to a Million, brought to you by Unstack. I'm your host, Zach Rego. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Coyle, co-founder of MarketMuse, the industry-leading technology and methodology for content planning and evaluation via semantic relevance. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much, Zach. I look forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Obviously, there's a need in the marketplace for efficient content planning, content creation, optimization. Startups are building, their business on content. Unstack is doing that today. A lot of our clients are doing that, which is why they use Unstack and the amazing CMS and content engine we have. Give me a bit about your background and kind of the genesis for MarketMuse and how you've kind of delved into this space.
I'm going to go way back, but I'll make it quick. So I went to computer science school at Georgia Tech. That's my degree. But the last part of that at that time, I was spending on usability theory, so user interface, as well as some of the early search engine technology, so like intranet, text search type stuff. And I started as an intern at a company called Knowledge Storm. So I say this, it's very fresh in my memory because May 1st was 22 years ago, first time I did anything in the search space, right? And I've been focused on lead generation, search engine optimization, content strategy, content syndication, paid, anything that involves traffic going to a website and stuff happening to it for about that long. But the reason why I bring that up is because, Knowledge Storm was really focused on getting people to even think that content was a thing. So we were convincing large B2B tech companies to have content on their websites and to syndicate it or to have their white papers. We were like digitizing brochures to try to get it on the web so that, and these are big companies, these are IBMs and Dells, and they didn't even have content on their websites, right? And so we created a machine to generate leads. I mean, we were generating millions of leads per month. And in 2007, we were acquired by a major publisher who also was a lead generation provider called TechTarget, who you may be familiar with in the B2B world, still an amazing provider. Now, they've also branched off into the intent data industry. And the reason why I bring this all up, because when I got there, right, I was like, I have this machine for generating leads. It's amazing. But I hadn't worked with editors, and I hadn't worked with content strategists, and I hadn't worked with subject matter experts. I was just generating leads from stuff I've syndicated. And that was my first foray into saying, I've got this machine over here. I've got all this great advice that I could give you, but it had nothing in mind for the subject matter experts or the content strategists or the editorial leadership who they know the beat. They know the topic. So I was handing them, hey, focus on this keyword. And they were like, what? What do you know? And at the time, I thought I knew. But actually now I realize I didn't know. I didn't know any of these processes. And so for the next 4, 5, 6 years, the time I was there, I spent really focusing on those workflows, those manual brainstorming, hunches, all the reasons why people write content, and all the pain that's involved with that. The pain in the form of no confidence, the pain in the form of bad efficiencies and bad processes, and had written all these manual processes out. I made one process that I'll note at the tail end of my time at TechTarget. That was a topic modeling exercise where we reviewed and manually built out a topic model that said, if I were an expert on this topic, here's the stuff I would naturally cover. It took 30 to 40 hours for one topic. Well, tail end of my time there, I met my now co-founder, and he had built an artificial intelligence, basically the infrastructure for an artificial intelligence software offering that knocked that down to 2 minutes. And I said, whoa, okay, well, if you can do that, what else could we do? Fast forward 9 months later, and I'm the co-founder of MarketMuse. The first version was really focused on updating content, and now we've expanded into everything you'd ever want to know. What should I build? What should I create? What should I update? And everything in between. We even take it all the way down to building outlines with artificial intelligence. And we're in the earliest phases of, we're kind of the front runners, us and OpenAI, in the generation space, where we're focused on really taking it. I want writers to write. I want writers to be able to apply their subject matter expertise. I don't want writers having to worry about things that relate to that research component, or the stuff they don't want to do. And what we've learned is when we do that, when we unlock the great writers, when we unlock the great editorial leaders, when we unlock the subject matter experts, everything starts just pumping. Because there's people on your team that know your product, for example, I'm sure, and they don't write anything. How do you get the stuff out of their brain onto the page more effectively? So, and then everything else that goes in between. So, yeah, long answer, but yeah, that gets you to everything that I've done in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, 22 years in 2 minutes,
Right.
not bad. No, I you mentioned something there that I think is really interesting is startups have a lot of employees, right? Not a lot, but a lot of subject matter
Relevant.
expertise that
Yeah.
are not involved in marketing or content creation at all. I think of one, at Unstack. He does all of our UX design, all of our theme creation. Those are two things that are kind of the backbone of what
Mhm.
our themes and our websites and our client sites are built on. I haven't used him for content once, so there's an idea. Like that's huge. So I talk to a lot of clients, right? They're coming to us, they're looking for a website. That's kind of the entry point. Websites, landing pages, but then content is third. How do I get traffic, right? So they think I want to create content. They get hung up at the earliest phase, which is what kind of content do I create? So, looking back to your content strategy, you just launched this product. Like you're creating content for content writers, right? So what kind of content do you create when you're at that jumping off point?
I mean, in the earliest version, so MarketMuse is, the time frame that I was talking about there was like 2014, 2015. So we're now very well established. We created the category of content intelligence. We were the first people really focusing on expertise for optimizing and updating content as well. The market's a lot larger now. It's a lot more mature. People know they have to make sure their content is focused. It's on topic. It is comprehensive. It's written as if an expert had written it. People know that. They just don't know how to get there. And so a lot of times you start, and the reason why I tell it that way is the earliest versions of our own site, we were the cobbler's kids have no shoes. Absolutely. Because it's so hard to resource that first content resource. So you're stuck in outsourcing, you're stuck in the founder writing, you're, the persons who you don't have great processes for even brainstorming what should we build. And so for a small team, I always like to think about I have a 4 square on my wall. It's quick wins, it's stated goals, it's risks, and then it's operations or organizational. I'll tell you what that means in a second. But the quick wins are what can we write today that's going to put the most points on the board for whatever our KPIs are. No matter how big you are, you've got some quick wins out there. Stuff you can write, stuff that you can update. The plans are like, we want to own headless CMS. Let's just say we want to own content management software. It's going to be a big step for that. But we want to own these topics. We want to be the thought leader. And that's when you start getting into having to build out the buyer journey. What do we have coverage on? What are the related topics that we need to cover? And then you start building out that infrastructure. How much content do we need to create to actually have an impact and grow against that topic? And then you have risks. You've got competitors publishing. Maybe you've got a website and basically a bunch of people who are listening to this are all going to go, oh yeah, that's me. But 90% of the traffic or 80% of your leads come from one page or a small subset of pages. What do you do about that? That's a huge business risk that people don't want to talk about because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to have a plan. Oh, just keep writing. Maybe something will get traffic. Well, building an infrastructure around that page is a tried and true technique so that you're not as fragile. And then there's the organizations. They're a little bit larger. You take in orders, right? Make this page, do this, right? And you respond. You don't actually do anything strategically. Well, at MarketMuse, I want to make sure that you put your best foot forward every time you hit publish or every time you take the time to update a page. Whether you're updating it for any reason, you want to make it more current, you want to expand it, you want to make sure that you've integrated other pages elegantly, or whatever the reason may be. But if you're as a starting point, I really like to think about who do I want to be? Who am I today? And how do I bridge that gap? And it gets into, that's when you start to think about yourself. What are our topics? What are the concepts? And if you have no content, One way to do that is through looking at competitors and competitors that are on the money for intent, not just the persons that you sell against, but also publishers, aggregators, anyone that publishes on that topic. What have they covered? How have they covered it? Are they focused on beginners or experts? Are they focused on particular industries? Are they covering the whole buy cycle? Awareness, consideration, purchase, but don't forget post-purchase troubleshooting and champion development. That's where all the content marketers forget. They forget that post-purchase troubleshooting. And so you know what happens? You have a software product or a B2B SaaS company. You only focus on awareness and consideration or purchase, or worst case, your demand gen team runs the show and you're only focused on purchase, which makes no sense, but that's another story for another day. But then you get the customer, and where do they find out how to fix your site, fix your product? Where do they find out how to solve the problems? They find out on Stack Exchange, or they find out on Reddit because you didn't write anything, or you got other things. So anything under the sun that goes to the topic and then connects to the entire prospect as well as customer journey, that's where you have to start. You've got to be there when they have the pain, whether they're a customer or whether they're just learning they even know that they have this problem. And in our case, what we did was we started out sourcing it for ourselves, and then we started realizing that we have to use MarketMuse. And we have to show that by using MarketMuse, we become the winner. And we just knock that out of the park every time. We started off, actually, first thing we did was we put our MarketMuse content score on all of our own pages, right? To show that we eat our own dog food. But then we realized that that wasn't enough. We need to show how we actually came up with the fact that this was a good article to write, or this was an article to update. So we do kind of a combination. It's great for repurposing. The other thing is early stage companies can really benefit from repurposing. I said that, but really thinking about everybody learns differently. So if you're going to take the time to write a long form 3,000 word guide, what are the other ways you can turn that into other packaging for particular industries or other capture devices, other formats? And sometimes you can turn a lot of work into 2x, 3x, 4x the output, because not everybody likes to read 3,000 word articles. And maybe they don't trust you yet. The biggest thing that moves as you grow your thought leadership is trust. So people will land. If they've heard of you a little bit, they might trust you enough to read that entire 3,000 word article. If they haven't, they're landing, they're like, ooh, this better be really good. And then they're going to figure that out later. So I always like to say, pick your stage by the maturity of your company, how much content you're writing, and pick your level of repurposing based on that fact too, because you might not be able to get somebody to read your blog because it's, Jeff's blog. And, they're getting there like, who's this person? Why am I supposed to listen to their advice? Right? Versus an established company, where they land on the MarketMuse blog, they know they're going to get something that's written by experts in content strategy. So they're reading it, they're like, whoa. So their likelihood of diving deep is going to be high. I don't have to worry about other formats as often unless I get benefit out of them. So just a lot of different things to think about.
We talk a lot about leverage, right? So how can we take one asset that we spent time creating and very quickly turn it into 5? The podcast is a great example. We record it, we put it on our blog. It's in audio, it's on YouTube. We take snippets and create a whole nother variant. So that's why I love, an hour and a half of my time turns into a bunch of content, obviously with some editors in the back end. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that. You talk a lot about kind of pillar content, right? Kind of building a strategy around a topic that you're able to go deep on. You talked about the white paper, which can sometimes be made up of multiple blog posts that are along the same topic, or take the white paper and turn it into multiple blog posts along that topic. That's a big investment, right? So for me to go and say, I'm going to do 3,000 words, I've got to be extremely confident that the time I'm investing is going to drive some demand. Strategies for figuring out that confidence level to where you mentioned input and then kind of the output. Where do you find that balance of confidence that, hey, we're going to go deep on this topic?
So this is the cracker for almost everything we've ever tried to do was to build out methodologies and metrics I mean, one of our original missions was content confidence, because I feel that it's actually not right now what our slogan is. We're now we want to set the standard for content quality, because that's something we also want to do. In other terms, we don't like bad content. I'm going to rid the world of bad content. On my Clubhouse profile, that's what it says below. Rid the world
There's
of bad
no
content.
shortage. Good
Right.
luck.
And I'll tell you how we're doing it. But basically objectively evaluating something that was subjective is always our goal in writing, because it's an art. It's tough to evaluate something that comes from someone's heart or from their experience objectively. But we do it every day with spelling, right? We do it every day with grammar. But we hadn't yet, until MarketMuse, started to evaluate semantic relatedness, evaluate comprehensiveness, right? So then we said, hey, if we can do that at the page level, can we do that at the site level or the site section level, like the search engines do? Search engines evaluate authoritativeness at the site section topic combination level. They have to. It's very computationally difficult, but they're the big bads that can do it, right? So we have to be thinking in that way when we're thinking about our own authority. So what we built a metric for topic authority. We also use that to show our competitive advantage. So that shows us our breadth of coverage, whenever we cover these topics, how well do we typically cover them, how much existing momentum, how much mo we got on this topic, and then what's the competitive landscape look like. Not just, people do this, they try to do it with links. They look at off-page links. That's like 1/10 of the game here. I would like to say, if you've got a single data point that you think directs prioritization for content, make sure you look at the results and see if you batted over 50%. Most of them don't. If you use, for example, search volume as your North Star, or you use PPC, pay-per-click competition, as your North Star for organic competition, which makes no sense, but it's not even closely correlative. Or you use off-page factors like links, or even any of those three in combination. I want to see your content efficiencies last year and how often you're right. And your number's probably close to 10 to 15%. That means for every article you create, how frequently did it yield the benefit that you thought it would have? How predictive was your work? I say this in a long story there because, by the way, the average there is about 10 to 15%. We work with teams to get that up to 40 and 50%. That means every 2 articles you write, 1 wins. That's when we can start setting our watch to content, right? And that goes for updates as well. That's what we're hoping for with outcomes, because the outputs aren't close to the outcomes in content, right? You've got to get to outcomes, because I can publish 4 articles and I can sit there and hope they're going to do well. I want to be predictive with what I produce. And the way that we've done that basically is to look at our authority on these topics and look at our competitive advantage. And when that is a larger volume for that topic or for semantically related topics, I have an unfair advantage. If I write good, high quality content and expand my coverage on those areas. And when I cross-reference that with difficulty, how hard my competitive landscape is, I have a deadly weapon for content. That's the predictive part of content. And that's something that only we do. But basically, if you want to take it into an easy example, let's say you own a topic, right? I don't know why I said headless CMS, because I don't even think you're a headless CMS, are you? You're a straight up CMS, right? But let's just say you own headless CMS. And you own that. You got number 1 in organic search, and then you're buying because you know that you have to buy even when you're number 1 because you're best practice. And you type in headless CMS troubleshooting, and you're not there. All right. What are the odds that if you built out a really good troubleshooting section on that site, that you could own that topic? Very high. But if you've never written about that and you have no winners, it's going to be really low. It's just like, if you go write the best review of the new iPhone and you go put it on zaxblog.com, no chance. You put the same article on CNET and it's going to be number 1. There's a reason for that, but no one's ever been able to quantify it. When they've always tried to lean on things like demand or things like links, doesn't tell the whole story about expertise and authoritativeness. And that's what our job, the guiding light for our company is to make things more predictable and more focused on expertise and authority. And we know that if we keep doing that, people will start to not create this doubt internally. That basically everyone's got this doubt internally that says we can only publish 10% efficient. It's not true. You can publish 50% efficient. You can update or optimize to 50% efficient. And I always like to tell people, I'll ask you, Zach, how much does content cost on average for you?
I have one full-time employee.
Oh man, right.
So
A lot of people will say $100, right? And I'm like, oh really? How many people touch that internally? What's their rates, right? And then I say, how much of it was successful? And they're like, oh, like 15%. I'm like, wow, you better 10x that cost. The real cost of content is dramatic. And then I start to talk to them about opportunity cost. Because traffic you're not getting now, right? And so like the real cost of content, then the opportunity cost, when you combine those and compound them, they're nasty. I mean, it is the budget. If you want more budget, that is the way you do it. It's how much do you, hey, CEO of my company, how much do you think content costs? $200? Okay. Let's walk through. Right now we operate at 10% efficiency. That's $2,000. How much are leads worth? How many leads could we get by the end of the year? If we were getting them now, how much would they be worth? You get into this point where every article you're writing is costing you about $10,000 or more. Then guess what? You start writing long form content.
Yeah. And if you're looking at every article, how many leads are driven by it? Based on the cost.
Exactly.
1 out of 10 is getting 5 leads. That's not.
I know it's scary. And then then you get the demand gen teams that control the narrative sometimes, and that's really painful because if you don't write a great what is or early stage awareness or a middle of the funnel or troubleshooting and champion development content, you don't deserve to rank for pricing or for, something bottom of the funnel. And so they only focus on the direct return on investment of the bottom of funnel and don't give attribution to the fact that you need the whole enchilada to start doing well with your landing pages. And only the teams that have evolved and realized that when you're evaluating a topic, you got to evaluate all the pages in the cluster, all of them. They all contribute to the total number of leads. And they get off this page versus outcome. Because page versus outcome isn't real. And I say that all the time. Cannibalization isn't real. Page versus outcome isn't real. You've got to really be thinking holistically to get it right. And that's what the best publishers in the world are doing. They're like, my whole package about pets yields this much money. They're not saying the Boston Terrier page yields this much money. You got to do both. You got to know the direct value and you got to know the indirect value. And that's how you build business cases to be like the publishers. And that's what you're looking to do, really.
So you've talked a little bit about, I think one thing to take from all of that is go deep on a topic. Like pick a topic, go deep on it, but don't go deep on it just in the content. Go deep on it in how you're thinking about the entire journey, which I think is missed often. And then I think the other thing that's missed often is I wrote it. It's not a field of dreams scenario. Like they don't always just come instantly. Like you need to go and find new opportunities to distribute the content.
Yep.
How have you at MarketMuse or even coaching up, earlier adopters, how do you get them to distribute the content to make sure that there is starting to get some volume of traffic there so you can get, those quick wins early, which I think are really important because it is a little bit tough to create content and then sit and wait and hope, which is not something we all want to work on.
Well, it's also one of these things where I like to have a conversation with someone and say, like, tell me all the channels you know. And then how much of this power, how much of this value is being generated by hustle versus system, right? And what's missing, right? It's not, promotion isn't just, buying on Taboola, right? In fact, it's very little to buy on Taboola. But it's also about what assets do we have? And one really forgotten about asset is employees and friends and network, and consistency. So employee advocacy, is one of the paths to consistency on many distribution channels that is untapped. So, a simple one, for example, if you've got a 30-person company, and every one of your LinkedIn posts doesn't have 30 likes and shares, you got a problem. It should. 30 should be your minimum bar, and everybody needs to do that stuff, and then maybe you've got a few one layer outs that are going to be consistent, right? Because the easy way you do that, show them how many views you get with that 30 and 30. Show them how many views you get when there's 4 and 5 people from the marketing team. One of them's 4,000 views, one of them's 40 views. Show them the companies that looked at that LinkedIn post and ask them, do you want people like this to be customers? This is an every time thing. This isn't when I ask you to share type thing, right? And you go through all of your channels and think about, what assets do I have? Who are these assets? What am I not making the most of? One example, rich media optimization, you talked about before. But some people, summary and show notes. I call it the 7 planes of rich media optimization hell. Summary, show notes, transcription, summary, show notes, transcription, and annotation, and connection to the rest of my site. And then repurposing. And then repromotion. Right? Those are my 7 stages. If I go through all of those, how much time do I have to put out? Who's helping me with that on my team? Who's helping me to promote? And then how big is my audience? How big is my buyable audience? How big is my emailable audience? How big is my partner channel audience? Because I can say to somebody, hey, friend, hey, Zach, can you put a link to MarketMuse landing page in your email newsletter? You're going to go, no. Or we have 20,000 people. I don't know if it's the right audience, because you're going to be nice about it. But I might say, hey, here's the perils of using an inadequate CMS system. And we've really done a thorough, fair, objective walkthrough. Would you put that into your next newsletter? And you're like, yeah, that's a great article. And how often are you using those scenarios too, right? I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So the more of those types of possible channels one creates, the better foundation you have, so that you're not publishing and hoping they come. You got a predictable floor, and you got to build that predictable foundation, build a predictable floor, or go spend lots of money. I don't like spending lots of money. I like spending lots of money on some things, right? But I don't like spending money on that. I need to have at least a min. And the one that gets me the most is when you have a product-led growth company. You got 40 developers, and they don't ever promote any of your content. It makes no sense, right? And that's where I see a lot of that in startups. I see a lot of people who, hey, you're a member of a mastermind? Great. How many of them help you? Tell them, be honest. Hey, this is a couple clicks a month. Right? Please help me out here. They're going to help you. It's like, the promotional guide to sorting out my social network. That's a valuable social network. It's not nefarious in any way. They care about you, and they're going to show it. And that's what you should care about, every one of your channels, and know which ones are the winners and know which ones are the losers. By the way, I have literally a picture of stratified levels of the number of likes and shares that my posts in my network get on LinkedIn. And it will predictably get that. And every time I post something on LinkedIn, I share it in Slack, the little bar graph, and say, we need to get to 40, folks. Any way you can get it. I don't care if your mom clicks on it. We need to get to 40 because I need 4,000 views on this post. And you got to get into that fun, positive reinforcement, instant gratification, because there's nothing better than instant gratification in content. And what people die on is they're like, our content is unpredictable. Content takes 3 months to see any benefit from. And when none of that's true at all, if you're writing the right content, updating the right content, and using all your power wisely, you can make that much more instant gratification. I mean, I can pick a winner on your site. I can go to MarketMuse and pick the page you should write. And if you write it, I have a great chance of being successful, which is wonderful when you're selling MarketMuse, right? Because I want those quick wins. I said, hey, Zach, go update this page. Here's how you should update it. And I know it will improve. And I can say that with really high level of confidence. Well, that's how you get hooked on stuff, because you see those quick wins. Not everything's going to be easy, but it's real nice that there are things that are easy. And some of those things are fun. And I can get into a few of them, but an easy one for the audience is go to your homepage, look at stuff you're ranking on in Google Search Console or whatever, and maybe you're ranking on page 2, and maybe your homepage doesn't have any content on it. Go write those pages, because the search engine believes that you're about that topic. And then people are landing on your homepage, and you're not following through. You're not satisfying that intent. Well, go take those intent mismatches and turn them into your next pillars, and then call me later. So those are
That's
fun.
when you get tips 2 and 3.
Yeah.
No, you mentioned the LinkedIn one. I think that's such a challenge. And another thing that we've spent a lot of time looking at is what hashtags are we using?
Yep.
Honestly, like we've had posts that get 20 likes and a few comments and then 5,000 impressions, and we've got posts that have 50 likes and 5 comments or 50 comments and 2,000 impressions. It's like, man, what the hell happened here? And then we started really being consistent on some of the hashtags that we got fewer likes but more impressions, which is just kind of a way of seeing like how many eyes are getting on this.
Yep.
And it's been interesting to test that model, but you're so spot on. I think the other thing is distribution is key throughout your team. So at WordStream, I spend a lot of time on getting my sales team to connect with all of our prospects and then share relevant content. So we were verticalized to agencies, right? So all the content that my team was sharing was typically the content we were writing for agencies or white papers we were creating for agency scale or efficiency. But it does create volume. And now that I'm managing the whole funnel, I get to look at analytics every month and see, wow, we got 160 visits to this post that we went and promoted a few times over the course of a couple of weeks because it was doing well. And like, that's just from LinkedIn.
Right.
Like that's meaningful to us. So I love doubling down on those strategies and really getting your whole company to double down. You brought up a great point, which we have not done a great job of, is showing the results. Here's what happens when everyone likes and shares and comments, and here's what happens when you don't.
Yeah.
And if you're bought into our mission, you better get your ass on that post and like and share and comment.
It kills me. And it still happens, by the way. People are busy, it still happens, but it's so wonderful when they do. And I always like, because, if you're showing that, you're showing that traffic, you're showing that a lead came through because of something someone or a group did. I mean, it can really raise all boats and get people excited. And on the other side, it's looking at the data, right? You said this was 160 visits from this, right? I always like to think of who those people are, really be empathetic. And, a great example of that is we're about to publish a post on content brief templates and examples. Because for example, you eat our own dog food, we're number 1 in organic search for content briefs. We better be, because we're the first people to automate a content brief, right? And what I looked at is like a lot of people were getting to that page looking for templates and examples. So we weren't satisfying their need by walking through everything you want to know about content brief. So I said, hey, we need to go write pages about different types of templates, different types of examples. And MarketMuse told us that, by the way. This software is like, go write this page, right? It doesn't say that, but And the more times you have those types of experiences, or like think like an expert. If somebody truly was an expert on Raleigh breweries, we were just talking about Raleigh breweries beforehand, but they never talk about Bond Brothers. Maybe they don't actually live there. Maybe they're just an SEO writing about stuff. They don't actually talk about the things that an expert would have covered, right? And that's really where you get to parity on what does it mean to be an expert, and am I showing the world that I know them? Do I know the audience? If I'm selling to agencies and my site doesn't talk about problems that agencies have, or even say the word agencies, that doesn't make any sense. And so it's little things like that really get into the show them, them, empathetic content, but also to cover the whole funnel. Because what if you get somebody in and they're like, I don't even know what a CMS is. I know I need to have content because of this SEO thing, because I watched this YouTube video and this guy told me that cannibalization is real and I should have one page for every topic. By the way, none of those things are true. One page, one topic, that hasn't been real in 10 years. So if you've still got people internally that are like, oh no, we don't want to write content on this topic for multiple audiences or multiple stages of the funnel, just send them my way. We'll do a little brainwashing session, get them back on the bus. You're not building an affiliate site that you can just throw away when it dies. And a lot of the information about this comes from people who are selling affiliate advice. They're not working for real companies, because if their site dies, they go get another one, right? You're not in that boat, most likely. You're trying to build a company and have it grow. You've got to build something that lasts the test of time. There's no quick wins coming. Those quick wins coming that are tricks. There's quick wins coming because they're things that you actually earned. You're just probably not realizing the benefit of that earn. Like, people know you for something. People know you personally for something, for having expertise. They know your company for having expertise. You're not just building houses of cards. You're trying to build true thought leadership and content that exhibits your expertise. And when you do that, then it's beautiful. Then everybody knows. Everybody feels great at your work. I mean, when someone comes to our site and they're like, I always go to MarketMuse because I know you give us information that most people make you pay for. I love hearing that. And I know it's being written by experts. You're not outsourcing this. Like, it's not just some, person in, Antarctica who wrote an article about kitty cats who, they're not even allowed to, I don't even think have cats in Antarctica. But maybe they are. That's totally BS. But you're getting, basically, does your content show that you understand that person? Because that person could be a prospect, or they could be a prospect 2 years from now, or they could have just really liked the article and share it with their network. You've got to be thinking about the channels and the impacts of all of the things that your content can create. This podcast transcript, right? How many different people could this be read by if we did it right?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think the last thing, you've mentioned this a few times, updating content. So it's key. And we spend a lot of time. We hired an amazing, content manager, and first thing she did when she came in was went and looked at all of the stuff that had been written by our founder when he was just banging away at a keyboard trying to get the business off the ground, right? And
Love
it
it.
worked, and he got traffic, and he did well. But optimize, update, refine, make sure it's linked to new articles. How often are you recommending people keep an eye on historical content to update it and really get it to a place that it's optimized regularly?
I will tell you 3 different answers to that question. First, the best publishers in the world, the reason why they're the best publishers in the world is because they have super strong update, expansion, and optimization processes in place. They are machines. And they're typically 3-letter words and 3-letter names, and they all have these just amazing processes. We work with some of the largest publishers in the world to develop these optimization processes, but some of them just have them because that's how they win, right? And you got to have reasons to update, right? It's not current. The intent has changed on this topic. For example, if I wrote an article about natural language generation last year, the market's changed, 4 times. The market has completely changed 4 times. And gosh, that thing would be out of date, And it also wouldn't mention common topics that have to be mentioned, right? They have to be mentioned for you to truly be an expert. So people always think about out of date, but you may actually have missed things that really matter because the market evolved. New concepts came out. New concepts were invented, right? And that's another piece. But the other one, maybe it wasn't good when you wrote it. Right. And so what I like to say, a content inventory is about tuning the mirror so that it's not a funhouse mirror sometimes, because maybe it got the job done at the time, but it actually isn't comprehensive. And a cool thing is when it's written by your founder or something like that, or written by an expert, sometimes it will gather moss. It'll gather power and authority just naturally. Then the content didn't follow through. So it punches above its weight. And if you've got a content item that isn't great, right, for one of these, it's not comprehensive. It doesn't cover the topic comprehensively, but it gathered a bunch of links. It gathered a bunch of power for some reason. It's structurally at a high depth rate on your site, so you feature it, but it's not good, those can be unbelievable layups for your company. Just knock out, make them comprehensive. Another thing for temporal content that was a moment in time, sometimes those can be evolved into being more appropriate for all times. And so be thinking about making something more universal, making something, you're not watering it down. You're making it a better user experience if someone lands there today. That's what you're trying to think about. And then there's so many other reasons to update a lot. I mean, I'll give you, this is the free tip of the day, right? Is when you publish something new and you don't go and you link to your old stuff and you don't go back to your old stuff and link to the new stuff. Biggest mistake in all of publishing. Or you have editors that won't link to other editors' content. For one reason or another, they just don't like them. Because maybe they're different media groups. Maybe they don't respect the content that was created in history. But any reason you're not integrating all the semantically related content that you've already written, and when I say that, I mean like content on topics that are relevant to the topic that you're writing. So if I write an article about A and B is related, if I write an article about my Yeti Blue microphone, and I also have acoustic bafflers articles, and I don't link the two, that's a bad move. I don't care if Joey wrote this one and Johnny wrote this one and they don't like each other. Make sure you link those content items because it tells the story that you actually know what you're talking about. You know about the buyer journey. So what do? You buy the microphone. Then you realize that your office has terrible acoustics. Then you have to buy the baffler. And then you realize, oh, cool, now my office works, right? And so that's the journey to buying that baffler. So if you sell that baffler, I think it's called a baffler, right?
I don't know. I bought 3 microphones. They're all different.
I have a baffler and a microphone. I've gone through this. I think that it's this thing. It has soundproofing. It's got a metal box. You know what I mean? So anyway.
No, I love that.
Good.
I think that's a great recommendation for any early stage marketers because you were probably in a similar state that I was when I started. You're digging into the old content. You're trying to understand it. Linking content is key. We've tried to make that super simple in Unstack, which is a huge win for our clients, a huge win for our team because we are, short staffed and trying to just scale things up. So love those recommendations, Jeff. Thank you so much. Last question we ask all guests.
Okay.
2 books you recommend every founder reads when they're in their founder journey.
I'm a big storytelling fan. So everything about storytelling. And there's a book by, my brain is going to lose it, but Storyworthy by Matthew Dix is a wonderful book. It walks through the architecture of what makes a story valuable. And if there's something that I know from history is that people not having the same story that worked for your company, it allows people to come in and tell your story. And you want to be the one that owns your story from your experience, your aspirational value. So that's one. And then, my tome still to this day is The Art of SEO. It is a great reference. It's big. It's a big book, but it's the most reasonably current source of reference. So if you're thinking about content, you've got to at least be able to hack that book to be able to get into more advanced topics. And I really think that it is a best in breed offering. It stood the test of time. I think it's on its 3rd edition, about to be put out to its 4th. Eric Enge and Stephen Spencer and a couple of other folks contributed to that. But yeah, I mean, Storyworthy and Art of SEO. I'll sneak one in. Content Chemistry by Andy Crestadine is a really good book too, if you're thinking about content.
Okay. Those are great ones.
Awesome.
And all new recommendations too, which is always awesome. We've asked now 35 guests that, so you got net new options, which is amazing.
That makes me very happy.
Yeah. And you actually, I might have you do a test on our startup. What is it? Books for Startups Founders. Top books for startup founders blog. It ranks pretty well, but there's probably some
cool.
linking we could do in there. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. Where can everyone connect with you and more importantly, get more information on MarketMuse?
Awesome. Jeffrey_Coyle on Twitter. And I'm on LinkedIn pretty actively, as I mentioned. But MarketMuse, the blog, we have a content strategy crash course. It's all wide open. You can go read it. Covers all this thing. Our blog is just a wealth of knowledge. I do 2 content strategy webinars every month where we cover various topics, and we have an archive of over 100 recordings. So go check them out. Look for one that's relevant. Whether you're just looking to, we've got, what content should I update? There's probably one for that. Or, I'm an agency and I have no idea what to do about content. Or should I even have content as a practice? There's a spot there. But Jeff at MarketMuse.com, shoot me a note. Any questions? Fair game. I love this stuff. I want to go to Unstack and evaluate the site.
Please do.
That's just how that's what feeds my soul, is being able to go in and say, oh, I want to make your life more predictable. And as a content marketer, you don't realize it all the time. But that is the unlocker for budgets and for just feeling really good about the work you're doing. And gambling is hard.
Tell me about it. Not gambling on content as much as I'm gambling on sports, but exactly. We'll have to edit that out. No, we want these folks know that I gamble at this point, I think. Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, and everyone check out MarketMuse. I actually read a bunch of their content before I jumped on and met with Jeff, and there's some great guides in there that led some of the questions I asked, and will certainly lead some of the actions we take moving forward on the Unstack marketing team. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much. Cheers.